This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and this episode is brought to you by Silna Health. That's S-I-L-N-A. The premium front-end RCM company that leverages technology with a team of onshore insurance experts to handle benefit checks, eligibility checks, and prior authorizations. Finally, a vendor that you can trust, like a full-time employee that scales with your business. Just mention the Profiles in Leadership podcast to receive a free trial. Today, our guest is Kennedy Hawkins. He has been a CEO, a COO, a president, a vice president. He has a law degree, and he also has an MBA. He orchestrated transformational growth and was a turnaround healthcare leader with a proven track record of growing a mom-pa healthcare startup by increasing revenue by 2,614% and shepherding its evolution into a complex, nationally recognized organization. The company has been the recipient of multiple Oregon Top Workplace Awards, Best of Willamette Valley, and Innovation Awards as well. He drove the successful acquisition and integration with one of the largest publicly traded companies in the physical therapy industry, which is USPH. He is a servant leader, a public speaker, and recognized thought leader with multi-dimensional backgrounds at the intersection of business, law, and taxation. He is currently the Director Executive of the Development Center at Willamette University Atkinson Graduate School of Management. And he is the owner of Kennedy Hawkins Consulting, which provides fractional or interim CEO or COO, Managing Director, Management Consultant Services. He is the former president and CEO of Physical Therapy Northwest, which he held for 21 years, which is now part of U.S. Physical Therapy. He took the organization from 3 service locations to 27, including 12 outpatient facilities, 2 hospitals, 3 universities, 3 minor league sports teams, and 6 high schools. He built a national clinical learning community involving organizations like Intermountain Health, Advent Health, Boston University, Mountain Land Rehabilitation, Hartford Healthcare, and the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. He has a long history with the National Association of Rehabilitation Agencies, including being the past president of that organization. So Kennedy, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Hey, it's great to be here. I've followed your podcast for many years, and just looking at the people that you've had on here, from senators to best-selling authors and CEOs and everything in between, it's just I'm humbled, and it's a distinct honor. So thank you.
Well, that's great. And when we communicated about you being a guest on the program, we talked about, I mean, you and I, rubbed elbows in an area of the Northwest for years and years and years. And,
Right.
I think I've met you and shook your hand, but we never really, had that much of a relationship. So it's great that I finally get to sit down with you and pick your brain, because it's been a long time coming.
Well, thank you. And your group, I've told you and others as part of Therapeutic Associates, I've always held you and your group in high esteem. And when I was at PT Northwest, you were the group that we always measured ourselves against. So it's like I said, it's an honor to be a part of this.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I'm looking forward to the discussion as well. So the first question I got to ask you out of the gate is, I'm sitting here looking at your resume, which I only touched on a little bit there. It's huge. So you're an attorney, you've got an MBA, and you decide to go into business. Why in the world would you pick healthcare, and a small one at that, with like you said in the intro, a mom and pop
Yeah.
physical therapy company? Wow, that's I'm surprised at your choice. So tell me
Okay.
how you got there.
Okay, that's the question. That is the big question everybody always asks me. And so, when I got out of the MBA program and law school at Willamette, then went down and got my LLM in taxation from Southern Methodist University, I thought I'd always be a downtown Portland business tax attorney, and was kind of all set up for that out of graduation. And then recession hit, and then through a series of what I would either call circumstance or providence, a good friend of mine from the grad school at Willamette, his parents had a small physical therapy operation, and they had been their son didn't want to be a part of the organization. He was heading down to warmer climate in San Diego, and they approached me and said they'd been very kind to me when I was in grad school, and said, "Hey, would you be interested in helping transform this organization from a mom and pop to a more structured business entity, and then helping us on the retirement path, and let's see where it goes from there." At first, I looked at that opportunity and said, totally not what I was looking at. And
Yeah.
then as I kind of pondered it a little bit, it was more family friendly than, say, maybe a downtown big city corporate attorney. And given some of the things in my history and my personal background, being there for my kids was definitely important. I just I had like a 6 week old at the time, when I'm making
Yeah.
these decisions, and just decided that this seemed at the time was a little bit friendlier, family friendly option. I shook hands. I said, "I'll give you 2 years." And I spent 30 years at PT Northwest, and was
Yeah.
super blessed to be a part of that.
Well, that's amazing. And also in the intro, we talked about how much it grew over those years. And so, you come in, you've got some obviously some business knowledge and background, and but probably not a lot of physical therapy experience or knowledge. So how do you start? What do you do? You come in, and what do you do to get this thing rolling?
Well, I would say a couple of things is I would say I was the founder of PT Northwest. He was very much kind of a figure it out kind of guy. You figure it out. So I was kind of raised by wolves, so to speak, as I had to learn a lot of this by myself. But I was also blessed to have some key individuals in the organization who ended up being longtime business partners in the organization, who really kind of showed me the ropes and helped me understand the industry. So a lot of what I did was just learn and just soak it in, and then over time built some really good mentors in the physical rehabilitation space.
So was it a rehab agency when you began, or did you convert it to a rehab
I
agency?
did convert it to a rehab agency. So
Okay.
that was in the glory days of cost-based reporting, when you billed Medicare and you would get paid about 96 to 98 cents on the dollar. So yeah, I
Okay.
helped transform it into a rehab agency.
Okay, and the reason to do that, because I can remember those years too, and that always came up, but we as an organization chose not to do that. So I'm just curious as to why you thought that was the way to go.
Yeah, no, good question. Get asked that one a lot too. One of it was the cost-based reporting. So, we'd file our expense report every year, and we always did well on those reports. So you'd always expect a big check back from Medicare, after your cost report had been finalized. And then other things too. We didn't have the supervision rules of PT, physical therapy assistants, that you did in private independent practices. And then from a credentialing standpoint, you credentialed via the total entity, not the individual practitioner. So those are probably the three main reasons why we chose the rehab agency. And then you're just held to a little bit higher standard by Medicare, and we've always prided ourselves in just holding ourselves to a higher standard.
Okay, and so then when you got involved in that, I know that you got involved in NARA, which
You did.
stands for National.
Association of Rehabilitation
Okay,
Agencies and Providers. It is one of
okay.
the sister organization to the American Physical Therapy Association, American Occupational Therapy Association, et cetera.
And that's where I would assume that you met our mutual friend, Mark Anderson.
I did. I met him many
Yeah.
moons ago, Mark, when I had tons of energy and lots of hair. The hair is gone now due to 30 plus years in healthcare. But yes, Mark has been a good friend and mentor. and just confidant for, gosh, they're almost 3 decades. So yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
one of our mutual. You and I have many mutual connection points, but
yeah.
he's probably our most significant.
Absolutely. And I can remember him always saying, "Oh, you got to talk to Kennedy. You got to
Oh
meet
my,
with Kennedy,
uh,
whatever." So
yeah,
I have to say that I didn't take him up on that as much as I should have, because as we said earlier, we kind of were ships passing a lot.
right.
But anyway, so what do you think the key was to grow that small, mom and pop PT practice into what it became? What do you think the key to that growth was?
I think a lot of it is just people. I think a lot of, just was able to have a good team around us who kind of had shared vision, mission, and core values, and kind of a shared belief on how physical rehabilitation should go. So I would say a lot of it was just being blessed to surround myself with a really high functioning ownership team and leadership team in my tenure at PT Northwest.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then and then also get some great reference points through the National Association of Rehabilitation Agencies that we could kind of shoot for and model ourselves after. And then just always wanted to be pushed by the competition, and your organization was one that frequently pushed us, and we went, head to head against.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's great. I mean, I just think back on those days, and I've always promoted that, collaborate with others and work with
Yeah,
others and whatever. But, it was competitive. I mean, we
it
were in a
is.
market where, we had clinics right next to each other,
We
and
did.
we both, had opinions about each other, and most of them I
Yeah,
think were positive, but,
yeah,
it was a competitive
right.
environment.
And then
So,
you took, oh, go ahead. Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
I
That's
know, I
fine.
was going to say, and then you took one of my favorite spots for a clinic. You ended up taking it on a lake in Kaiser, Oregon, but
Oh yeah.
I've gotten over that one over time.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a nice location.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about. So then you build this up, as we heard, into a vibrant organization, and then you decided that it was time to make a move, and so you sold
Yeah.
the company to USPT. So, tell us a little bit about why you did that. What was your thought process, and why make that move at this time?
Yeah, so a couple things there. So it just after 30 years, I mean, I'd been thinking of doing some other things for a number of years. And I just think it came after 30 years. It was time. Had
Yeah,
helped lead PT Northwest through the pandemic. That was just let's just say, a extremely challenging time to be a healthcare leader. That's probably a kind way of putting it. But
yeah,
we weathered the pandemic well compared to most rehab organizations. And then just after 30 years, a lot of people have been talking to me, friends and colleagues, said you've kind of been a de facto consultant for a number of years. You should go out and do this on your own and help organizations and take what you've learned through, whether it's PT Northwest, your relationships with the American Physical Therapy Association, NARA, and just locations, healthcare organizations you visited and been on site with from coast to coast. You have a lot to offer, they said, and you should go hang your shingle. So after 30 years, and then talking to a lot of people I respect in healthcare and in business, I decided to launch Kennedy Hawkins Consulting. I get asked how that was. Recently, actually this month, I celebrate 2 years of doing this. And they asked me how it was, and I'd say it was invigorating and terrifying all rolled into one, because
yeah,
before it had been me and PT Northwest, or me and NARA, or me and the APTA. But now, as you found out,
yeah,
Stephen, it's just you. And
yeah.
so that is it's been a good ride, and very thankful for it, and thankful for the people that I've met along the journey, and then just the companies, organizations, and leaders I've been able to help.
Okay, so that transaction was 2 years ago. Is that what you said?
So I launched Kennedy Hawkins Consulting 2 years ago, but
Okay,
then the decision to bring in U.S. Physical Therapy as a major strategic partner and owner in PT Northwest, that was made in 2017, and that was
okay,
probably a decision that was made to bring some additional resources into the organization that we felt we needed at the time, myself and my partners. And then also too, you have to figure out, a lot of us were getting to a point of thinking about retirement or exiting, and
yeah.
what's that strategy going to be. So that was one of the things that we had considered as partners.
So if I'm looking at the timeline right, then you stayed with the company for a while
I
after you
did.
went to CSPT. Yeah.
I did. I stayed 5 years from
Okay.
2017 to 2022.
Yeah. And I know from my own experience, but how was that walking out the door for the last day after 30 years of working with that group? Couldn't have been easy.
No, it was good. I mean, I got a lot of long-time relationships there, so that I significantly value. And I think my wife, and I posted this on LinkedIn, the first day I showed up at PT Northwest all those years ago with a sport jacket and my bag and lots of hair. And then I posted, my wife had taken a picture of me 30 years later heading out the door, not wearing a sport jacket anymore, not wearing a tie, hair's gone, still carrying a bag with me. But yeah, it was a bit, I would say it was a bit
Yeah.
surreal. And you know, you get used to certain rhythms in an organization and as part of your career, and then those get reset. So it kind of took me some time to kind of decompress and then reset and then chart the next chapter in my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now with your new business, it says that, or it said that you do interim CEO or COO positions. So tell me an example of what that would be and what's it like?
Yeah, so actually, so I think when you go out on your own, you have certain ideas of where you think you're going to end up, but that's like in the interim CEO and COO roles, haven't done any of that. So what I primarily do is help, healthcare organizations, primarily in the physical rehabilitation space, on the consulting side.
Okay.
So I work on a number of fronts, from insurance contracting to helping with leadership development, revenue cycle. I'm doing a lot in the M&A field right now, which is something, again, I didn't think I would be doing, and I work on it on both buyers and sellers side. So on the consulting side, it's more what you would consider as the traditional business consultant.
So you probably, like me in the sense working in that position for 30 years, you're probably not real great at marketing yourself. So how do
Oh
people
my
know,
gosh.
how do
Oh,
people
you're the
know that you
best.
how do people
Oh,
know that you're out there and that you're open for business in this new way?
okay. So this is the Achilles heel of Kennedy Hawkins Consulting. So I have struck. So Stephen, I hear you laughing there. So this is the area where I have struggled, because I've always been about the team. That I've always been a big team person, and I've always struggled with saying, okay, I did this or I can do that. And so what I've had to do is I have some good colleagues in the industry. I think you know several of them.
Yeah,
One of them is
sure do.
a good friend, Rick Wenda, and he says,
Yeah.
"Well, look, if you aren't getting out there, then you're not, nobody's going to know about you. So you're going to have to get comfortable talking about yourself and what you can do for organizations, or as my wife would say, we're going to starve." So we're not going to starve, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just I have to do a better job. So one of the things I've been very purposeful this year about setting up a marketing plan, just like I've done with at PT Northwest and other businesses that I've helped. So that's the thing. It's a lot of my businesses come word of mouth, and from people who have known me in the healthcare space, and then just other individuals who have driven referrals my way. So if I had of anything that I'm working on for high priorities in 2025, it is definitely marketing Kennedy Hawkins Consulting.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because, as you know, we're in a world where a lot of people in private practice now are looking towards whether it be private equity or
Yeah.
joining a bigger group or whatever that is. And I think there's still a reluctance to go out and get a broker, let's say a traditional broker.
Yes.
So I can see that, a consultant or a coach or whatever you want to call it to help them through that process. I can see a real need for that. And I get asked that a lot too. Can you help me through this
Yeah.
process? Because a broker usually means that they're going to push a sale, and of course they make their money when the sale happens, and so there's always that feeling like maybe not that you don't trust them, but they have different motivations than say just a
Correct.
consultant would. So yeah.
Right. And that's where I'm finding, a lot of work has come my way. And just having been through that process when, we were looking for a strategic partner, and we ended up with US Physical Therapy for a number of reasons. But I think I think the groups that wanted to be in on those conversations and those negotiations, I think I lost track at like there were like 27 plus of them. So eventually we just kind of cut it off. But what I'm seeing, what I learned in that process, and yes, it's good to have what I call an outside set of eyes who are not motivated by having to actually turn a deal, but are going to give you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And oftentimes, as business owners, that's kind of your baby. That the business is your baby. You helped grow that from infancy to where it is today. So you're highly emotionally invested in it. But having a set of outside eyes who can tell you, who can look objectively at the situation, and as well as sometimes as business leaders and owners, that we develop a bit of a hubris. And, we think we've sometimes figured it out. And a lot of times we have figured out a lot of things, but having people who can come in and say, well, have you considered this? Have you looked at these options as you're looking toward a potential exit strategy or bringing in a strategic partner?
Yeah, that's great. And of course, I'm sure you had a lot of talks and negotiations and meetings with Chris Redding, who's also
Yeah,
been a guest on this
he
program.
is. Chris is a
And
great guy.
yeah,
Ton
he's
of
a great
respect
guy.
for him.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so it's funny when you talk about that because you go into your semi-retirement or maybe your new career ideas, and I thought I was the most prepared person in the world. I've said this many times before, and you just you have assumptions that just don't necessarily come true sometimes. So I kind of thought, oh well, I'm going to be an executive coach, so I'll get I'll get a group of people I'm going to coach, and I'll
Yeah.
have them for 5 years or whatever, and it just doesn't work that way.
No.
You get them and you work with them for a while, and then they decide to do something different, or maybe they say, okay, I've got a lot of good information now, I want to try some things on my own. And so whether we like it or not, there has to be a little bit of that marketing type of piece, because you have transitions. You don't hold on to them like I kind of thought I would. So my first thought was, maybe I'm not very good at this. They leave me because I'm no good,
No.
but I think it's just the nature of the beast.
I think so too. And I think what we don't want, at least my view of the consulting role is my job is to help accelerate your whatever you're trying to accomplish in your organization. And I want to build a cycle of independency and not dependency. Whereas I think a lot of
Okay.
consultants create a dependency cycle where the business can't really function well without them. What I like to do is just, help set clients up for success, teach them what they need to know, and then just keep the doors open for future work. Because if we've done our jobs well, I think there's going to be repeat business for us in other areas. So that's kind of my
Yeah.
approach. And just how do I make your organization better? How do I make you better? That's something that I'm passionate about and drives me.
So when you were with PT Northwest, obviously you're building new leaders and helping leaders learn and grow. And what kind of leadership development programs, or what did you do internally with that organization to get people prepared for the day that you weren't there?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Well, I think number one, we did have a leadership development program. I think of the things that I have a colleague in the industry, and she always says, like, what brings you joy? What brought me joy was helping to develop leaders and helping them to succeed. So we developed as time went on, and with any leadership development track, it goes through iterations, what's working and what's not working. But by the time I left, we'd had a pretty formalized leadership development track that focused on we start with big picture stuff. How do you be a leader? Your character matters. And then moving into what is the organization about? Vision, mission, core values. How do you drive that throughout an organization? How do you drive change in an organization? Because we work in a field that is constantly changing. So how do you drive that? And then how do you understand some of the key metrics and financial drivers that are going to permeate the success or failure of the organization? And then one of the other things I did toward the time of my departure at PT Northwest is what I liked is I would bring in other industry experts, because as you've probably seen this, Stephen, they hear from us a lot, in the company. And it was what I loved was bringing in outside experts to say, okay, I want you to speak on the financial piece of a rehab organization. Now I want you to speak on HR or retention or just things of that or innovation. So I like that. I like that change that I had made. And then too, just basically just tried whatever I could do to make sure that the organization did not depend upon me. And that was one
Yeah.
of the things that was really clear. And what I'm very excited about is, now I've gone on to another chapter in my career. The organization has gone on, they brought on additional partners. And it's going to be different anytime a longtime leader leaves. As you found out, the organization is going to be different, but that's okay. And the organization continues to go on and continues to flourish. So in
Yeah.
that respect, I feel, I did my job.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a real tribute to you. And I see this a lot too, where, in the PT world, you get the owner gets to a certain point where they kind of have done it all. And now they're getting bigger. They have more facilities. They have more
Yep.
people. Now it gets like, okay. And making that transition into sharing power and sharing leadership and doing that, it's tough on people. And so I do think that people like you and I can help them make that transition to, get the leadership development programs and get people going, because that really is, what you said is the key, is that when you and I leave, the organization just keeps buzzing right along and hardly misses.
Yeah, and leave it better than we found it.
Yeah,
That was always a
absolutely.
principle. Whatever I've been involved in, I've always tried to leave whatever I touched better than I found it. And hopefully, throughout the course of my career, that's been a hallmark of what I've tried to accomplish. But I think you're
Yeah.
right, is preparing them for what is the next step afterwards, because anytime you do bring in another organ, it's just going to be different. It always
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. And to get over that thought of you having to do it all and having done it all,
Yeah,
you need to have other people that are going to take some of that off your plate and maybe even do some things better than you ever did it. And, just to kind of grow that executive team and
right.
spread the I want to say burden, but that's not the right word. Just spread the amount of things that need to be done around so that you can focus on what you're really good at.
Right. I think that's crucial. And then also too, realizing that they are going to do things better than you did them. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That is okay. If we have a vibrant, dynamic organization, those things should be occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit now. Another part of your life at this time is you're at Willamette University, and you've developed a healthcare leadership certificate program that I noticed in your bio. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that, and do you think that have you seen any PTs go in that program, or are you out trying to recruit some PTs to get into that program?
Well, okay. So this is another. So like how I landed in the physical rehabilitation industry was not what I was planning. And just one of the reasons I stayed in physical rehab, maybe we could just touch on that, is as an encouragement to those in the field, is you change lives every day. So my friends in other industries with higher margins, they go, wow, that's a really tough way to make a living. And I go, yes, but we change lives every day. And one of the things I loved
Yeah.
about working at PT Northwest is when I'd wear our gear, people from, I mean, I've had people track me down at Disneyland, Costco. I mean, Costco's at other parts of the state. I mean, and just literally tell me their experience and their journey and how we, as our company, help give them their life back. So
Yeah.
that brought me a ton of intrinsic value and joy. And so that's why I stayed in the industry for so many years, because one of the best things I did was just love talking to our patients and just seeing the difference that we made as an organization. I'm sure it was the same with you when
Yeah.
you were at Therapeutic Associates. So how did I end up in academia? So I wasn't so just like I wasn't planning to be in physical rehabilitation, wasn't planning to be in academia. I had been, Willamette University, the MBA in law program. It's kind of one of my alma maters. And I had been on the advisory council to the MBA program. It's a very highly respected MBA program. Had been a part of the advisory council, and then the dean of the MBA program and the dean of the law school heard that I was looking to reset my career, and they said, "Hey, could we have a conversation?" So I was talking to the dean of the MBA program. My wife is from Scotland, and so I'm in Scotland visiting her folks, and I'm having a conversation via Zoom with the dean of the MBA program, and he says, "I have an idea for you." And I said, "Okay, tell me what that idea is." And he said, "I think you should come back on campus and help us develop a healthcare leadership program, and then help us run all of our executive development programs. And then I said, okay, I got to think about that. My wife, my wife has told me, stay open to things at this part of your career. Remember, you said you're going to stay open to things. So then I get back, I have a conversation with the dean of the MBA program, the dean of the law school, and they go, okay, tell me your concerns. And I said, well, I got a few. And I said, what are
Yeah.
they? They said, what are they? And I go, number one, I said, number one, I'm not an academic. And they both in unison said, that's okay. We have too many academics around here,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we could use some more business people and some more entrepreneurs to bring some different thinking into what we're trying to accomplish here. So
Yeah.
that's essentially how I ended up there. I said, okay, let's kind of shake hands. Let's finalize something. I'll do this for a year. We'll kind of test drive each other, and have really enjoyed the experience. I mean, it's very, academia is very different than what you and I have been accustomed to. But
Mhm.
just working between the College of Law and the MBA program to develop a healthcare leadership certificate program. We're going to be launching that in Q1 of this year. And yes, I hope to get some physical therapists in there. And then the goal of the program is really, Stephen, as you've seen it, is oftentimes people get promoted into those mid-level leadership or managerial positions, and they're not given, they might be a great physical therapist, they might be a great nurse, they might be a great physician assistant. They have no leadership or business background. So they get promoted into these positions. Organizations mean to give them some support. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But oftentimes we know how this goes. They almost sometimes it feels like they get promoted up to fail. So the goal
Yeah.
of this program is to really help in. It's not meant to be an healthcare MBA, not meant to be an NPH or MPA. It's meant to be an intensive, basically a crash course on the various things that you need to understand to be a effective middle level healthcare leader or manager. So that's the
Yeah.
goal around the program.
That's fantastic. And I totally agree. It's very much needed. Just because you're a good PT or a good
Yeah,
nurse does not mean that you're a good manager of other people or running an
right.
organization, and it's a whole different thing. So any training in that, I think, is really well done. The other thing I think that's really interesting is, as I just listened to your story too, and I tell this to people all the time too, is that sometimes people get stuck on they want to visualize or imagine or have it all mapped out of what they're going to be 10 or 15 years down the road. And I keep telling, I mean, if you would have told me I was going to be the CEO of Therapeutic Associates when I was a staff PT in Portland,
Yeah,
Oregon,
right.
there's no way I would ever think that.
Right.
And so, when things come towards you, hopefully you see an opportunity, and you don't have to embrace it 100%. You just have to be willing to take a step towards it, find out about it, and where it leads you is hard to predict sometimes. And so I think your story says that really well, and all that you've done so far.
Yeah, and that's what I get asked a lot by the Gen Y and Gen Z, like for career advice or career, and I
Yeah.
just tell them probably my number one would just be stay open. Just stay
Yeah.
open, and exactly what you said. Your career may go according to plan, but sometimes the best career paths and the best life paths are ones that were not expected and don't go according to our plan. Just to stay open to opportunities.
Yeah, it's one of my personal stories is, so I take a job in Portland, Oregon, as I said, as a staff
Yeah,
PT right out of PT school. And the person I went to work for, you probably know him, Dan Jones. And
yeah,
so,
Flander. Yeah,
yeah, and he was
yeah.
at the time president of the orthopedic section of APTA.
Mhm.
I thought, wow, this is just amazing. I'm going to be with this, orthopedic specialist. I'm
Right.
going to learn so much, which I did. And then it's so interesting that down the road, when I became the CEO of the company, um, in a way, not, as far as org chart wise, in a
Yeah.
way, now I'm almost like ahead of him, in the
Yeah.
organization. And it just
Right.
blew my mind to even think that, because he was my mentor. He was the one who introduced me to APTA and all these other kind of things. And so it's just like you said, you can't always predict it, and sometimes you end up in places you could never imagine. And so you just need to take a risk, be open to
Right.
opportunity, and as your wife said, be open-minded.
Yeah, that's what I've tried to do. It's not, but I got to say it's not easy because I tend to be a planner. I like to know what's next. And
Yeah.
so that is it's the exciting part of this part of my career, but also the a bit unsettling is because you just don't often know how things are going to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. So now one question I had too. So did you ever practice law as an attorney right out of
I
school?
do. I do.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
still am a licensed attorney in the state of Oregon. I do. I've worked with on legal projects with a good friend of mine from the MBA in law school, and a good friend. And so he has his own law practice, and so we've worked on cases together for probably 30 plus years. So
Oh, that's
cases
awesome.
that legal projects that are typically in the business and tax estate planning space. But yes, I still hold
Yeah,
on to those credentials as well.
that's awesome. So if I were to ask people in PT Northwest or any other organization that you've been involved in, how would they describe your leadership style?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. How would they describe my leadership style? I would say they would describe my leadership style is, uh, they describe my leadership. That's a good question. I would say they would describe my leadership style as hopefully one that is empowering, that gives people freedom that gave people freedom, the ability to get to achieve the objectives of either their part of the organization, somebody who could clearly articulate where the company was going and where it wanted to be, and somebody who I think also took an investment in them on a personal basis, that cared about me not just as an individual in the organization, who was a leader, but also cared about me on a personal basis, and someone who hopefully, if they spend enough time with me, somebody who made them better, both professionally and personally.
And I'm curious too, as trained as an attorney and not a PT. So when you went to NARA conferences and APTA conferences and everything, did you feel like a member of the club, or did you feel kind of like that outsider dude that was just coming in?
That's another good. So I felt like an outsider to start, and I think more especially at the APTA, just because it's populated with mostly PTAs or PTs, but I think what people realized, and NARA is focused more. It focuses on PTOT and speech, but it also focuses on the business side. It's really about the business community of rehab. So and so I felt more comfortable there, and then I think too, because I learned to talk like them. I dress like them. I speak a lot of their lingo, and so I think that's why, whether it's APTA or at NARA, I think I feel comfortable and they feel comfortable with me. But then I also bring some distinctives that they just don't have, and I've been called a bit of a unicorn in healthcare, because there's just not a lot of people who can understand the clinical side of a healthcare organization, but also to bring the business and legal and tax side that I do as well. So it's been invigorating, but yes, it does take some getting used to, I think, from both parties. But was really honored to be one of the few non-therapist presidents of NARA in its almost 50-year tenure.
Now, do you still have association or do things with NARA or?
I do. Yeah, I
Okay.
do. Yeah, it's been, as I've launched my consulting practice, obviously I've had to scale back those commitments. But yeah, one of the things that I still do is I sit on a couple of special interest groups and task force. One of those is the value-based care task force that I was on a call yesterday with them, and then
Mhm.
I still help lead the outpatient special interest group that really deals with outpatient providers in NARA.
Okay. So I ask this question a lot to people. You've been in the industry for 30 years, you've run it, you've seen the ups and downs, you've fought the payment battles, you fought the regulation battles and whatever. Are you optimistic with the private practice physical therapy world? Are you worried about it? What now that you can maybe step away and be a little more objective,
Uh,
what do you think?
yeah, this is another one I get. You ask really good questions. I get asked this one a lot too, because I've been an insider, but now I'm kind of an outsider, and I can kind of take a step back and look at things. So here are my thoughts. And this is one of the big reasons why I wanted to, when I was asked, like, hey, would you not only help lead and put together a healthcare leadership program, but also teach in it, is because I see tremendous opportunity for healthcare. Now, what I would say is, I think we spend more as a nation than any other industrialized country on the face of the earth. Our outcomes are, middle of the pack at best in many categories. But I think in physical rehabilitation, I think there's a unique opportunity here. And I think as we hopefully shift from a fee-for-service model to a value-based care model, I really believe physical rehabilitation is uniquely situated to capitalize on that if they put certain things in place. So I think if they do that, I think they're going to continue to show they add a high degree of quality, they bring a ton of value, and they're a very cost-effective component of the healthcare delivery system. So for me, I would say there's lots of challenges ahead, but I'm actually optimistic that if we can leave the fee-for-service model, which in my opinion was death by 1,000 paper cuts. I mean,
Yeah.
from 2011 to now, if you're a physical rehab provider, your reimbursement went down 42.6%. So
Yeah.
we've kind of seen that game. So for me, I would say I would invest in value-based care, which is something that I've been talking about for probably, I think I gave my first talk on value-based care back in 2013. So I'm dating myself here, but I've been a big
Yeah.
believer in that. So I believe if we can shift to that, I think physical rehabilitation is going to do quite well in that new model. So I would say I'm probably, if we can make the shift, I think I feel pretty bullish on it. But then again, I see our industry, when you look at when they survey healthcare providers, the ones that are most open to change versus least open to change, physical rehabilitation providers tend to be on the least open to change on that
Really?
continuum. They do, yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so you can probably reflect on that and figure out why. But I just, if you can get these organizations to change, I think there's great opportunity out there.
Yeah, and you've been around a long time, as have I, and we remember the days when if we could just, we just have, if more people would just know about us and know what we do and
Yeah,
would come to us and whatever. So I kind of feel like we've gotten there, but now we don't have enough people to service them. So now we've got, long wait lists, and then of course
you
the
do.
third party payer issues and all that make it a little more challenging. But yeah, I feel the same way. I think that, gosh, if we can just get people to um, see the value and come to us, first or often, and
Right.
even pay out of their pocket if they need to. I think that in the long run, we'd be better off and they'd be better off. But that's a big change in what the public has been sold as to what healthcare is.
Right. And I would say too, to follow up on that, I think part of that is incumbent on the industry. So, if you want to see change, you have to do a better job of telling your story. So
Yeah.
I've been often called an evangelist for physical rehabilitation, and I'm glad to wear that moniker. I'm actually quite proud of it, because I'm not one of you, yet I chose to stay in this industry because I see the value of it. And I wish more people, more healthcare professionals in this industry would be more zealous about talking about themselves, talking about what they do, talking about the benefits of what this industry does. So I will continue. to preach the merits of this industry, because, like I said, I know the healthcare continuum, and this is a really key and strategic area, especially when you talked about getting people first to physical rehabilitation as a frontline healthcare provider, instead of going to some of these more higher cost areas of the healthcare continuum.
Yeah, for sure. So do you still live in the Salem area? Is that where you reside?
No, so everybody thinks I live in Salem. No,
Yeah.
I live outside of Portland in a kind of a small community called Sherwood. So you
Oh
probably know
yeah.
where Sherwood's
I
at.
know
So
where Sherwood is.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
live in
yeah.
Sherwood. I still am on site at the Willamette campus a couple days a week. Sometimes I'm up at the Portland campus, But yeah, as much as I've tried to keep migrating north, it seems like I'll be migrating south. And then I have recently became a grandparent, and
Oh yeah.
so my and I have another kiddo on the way. So they're in the Mid Valley area. So I feel a lot more trips down
Yeah.
the I-5 corridor in the future.
Well, that's magical. I have one as well, and it's a
Yeah.
whole new world for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So, would you consider yourself, there's just another step in your career and you're out at full go, or would you consider yourself semi-retired? How do you describe what you're doing now?
Well, I don't ever see myself maybe retiring as we, know it in the current American culture. I like to be busy. I just like to be able to, I think at this part of my career, kind of give back. So I would see myself for the foreseeable future being able to work in in the healthcare space, in the academic space, doing the things that we had discussed, but also be also open to opportunities. I think one of the things that I enjoy about this season of my career and this season of life is I can just explore things that when you're leading a healthcare organization, or maybe as involved as I've been through the professional associations that I've been involved in, you just don't have the opportunity to explore. So what I like now is if I have a colleague or friend who says, "Hey, I have an idea for you," and I go, "Oh, okay, let's explore what that would look like." And I think also too enjoying a season to be maybe a bit more creative than I have been in the past. So those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to. But I continue to see working, and hopefully just taking some of the lessons that I've learned in 30 plus years in healthcare and helping other organizations kind of accelerate what they're doing. Because like I said, I was kind of raised by wolves, and yeah, you can do it that way. But if you can create an easier path for people and organizations, that's certainly what I'd like to do.
So, how does a guy from Oregon meet a woman and marry a woman from Scotland?
Oh my gosh, that's a whole. We could do a whole show on that. So I was I have a hashtag married up. So I met so I did my undergrad at Oregon State University, and so when I was at Oregon State University, my wife came from University of Aberdeen, and they had an exchange program between the two universities. And let's just say to simplify the story, we just kind of met when Frances, that's my wife, came over to Scotland. Her mom said, "Okay, you can go, but here's one thing:
Yeah.
no guys in America. You
Right,
gotta
right, right.
promise
You got
that
to
to
come
me.
back.
You gotta come back." And what did she do? She broke the one cardinal rule from her mom and dad, and we just happened to meet. We struck it off, and I think we've been together for gosh almost 38 years. And so
Yeah,
yeah, that all started
that's
a
fantastic.
fateful day, not a fateful
Yeah,
day, but just a kind of a
yeah.
chance encounter that developed into definitely something more.
And so the accent probably
Yeah,
lured you, right?
she's got a very cool accent. But yeah, that's kind of how we met, was as undergrad students at Oregon State University.
That's awesome. Well, Kennedy, in anticipation of our discussion today, is there anything that I haven't asked or haven't addressed that you thought we would or that you want to get into the program?
Yeah, you know what? I had some questions for you if that's okay. Because
What? Shoot away.
no, if that's okay, because I have been, so I think, I think how I ended up on this program was I had made some comments on some of your podcasts, and I go, that this is, I think I said to you, keep doing what you're doing because this is really good. And the jewels of wisdom and knowledge that come from this podcast are exceptional. So I would say for you, so you've been part of your consulting practice now for eight plus years. So my
Right.
question for you would be, what have you, if you had to give me one or two or three leadership lessons that you've learned from these 8 years of podcasts, what would you say those are? Or just give me your top one or two.
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I've told the story many times, but people say, why do you do this podcast? And
Yeah.
it's not like I make any money off it, but it's just, I'm a curious person and I learn something every day. So when I talk to these people, what do I learn? And I learn, I don't care if you're, as you mentioned, at the start, whether they're the majority leader of the Senate of the US, or their professional volleyball player that's also a model, or
Yeah.
some business guru or whatever. We all deal with the same issues, really.
Yeah.
And A lot of it to me is just communication. How do you communicate with people? How do you get your message out? How do you maneuver through challenging conversations and tough situations? And so, it's not that different no matter what level you're at. And I think that when I look at people that we talked about this a little earlier, is you look at people that have reached, pretty high levels of what they do. I do think there's a few common things. One is they're very open-minded, as you said. They're willing to, they see opportunities. I think people that really do well in life, they see something that maybe 90 or 95% of the people wouldn't even cross their radar. And these people say, "Oh, that's an opportunity. Maybe I should try
Yeah.
that or something." And so I think they're good at that. And one thing that I've always kind of geared my life towards is, as I always say, I'm never afraid to ask the question.
Yeah.
So if I'm talking with somebody, I ask them a question, and sometimes you're surprised at the answer. I ask them, "Could you do this?" And they look at me like, "Oh, I can't believe you're asking me that." But yeah, I can do that. And so just be willing to take a risk too.
Yeah.
I don't think you achieve anything in life if you always just try and have never get out of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
So, you got to kind of push the limit sometime, take some risk, be willing to do something in a different way. And especially in this world today, I gave a speech at the Graham Sessions a few years ago, and it was
Yeah.
called "I Believe in the Gray," because our world is pushing us so far into black and white thinking.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't care what side of the fence you're on or what your experiences is or whatever, but your perspective is interesting to me. I may not agree with any of it, but
Right.
it's still interesting to me. So I think if we have that interest and understand where people come from, and you don't have to agree with it, but you can certainly, consider it. I just think we'd be a lot better off as opposed to being pushed into. I said this the other day too. I hate labels. I hate when people try and
Yeah.
say, "Oh, you're this," or because you think this, then that means you think that. And I'm like, you don't. No, I hate that. Don't put me in a
Yeah.
box. So those are the kind of things I learned, and that's why I love doing this, because I can ask people like you and others, just don't be afraid to ask the question, ask questions
Right.
and hear what they have to say, and we all learn from it.
Right. That's an outstanding answer. So
Yeah.
last question I have for you
Sure.
is, so how long do you see yourself doing this?
Really good question as well. I've always believed that it's time, you should probably leave something when you're at the height of it.
Yeah.
Not leave when you're struggling or you're spiraling
When
down or
you're
whatever.
tapped out and they're
Right.
showing you the door. Correct. Yes.
A lot of people couldn't believe that when I retired from TAI. Again,
Yeah.
it was time. It was time to, bring somebody else in, get some new ideas, and I was ready. This will be published after the Graham sessions, but in 2 weeks it'll be my last Graham sessions facilitating after 18 years. And
Wow.
somebody says, "Well, why are you stepping down?" And I go, "Well, it needs it needs a new boost, a little something different, and it needs to evolve." And so, I think somebody with different ideas and different experiences, needs to take the helm and see where that goes. So back to your question about the podcast. I love doing it. My wife teases me that I spend more time doing this than anything these days. And it's my passion thing. I love
Yeah.
it. I look forward to it. I think I get better at it, and as we go, and yeah, I think you're going to be like 225th interview that I've done over 8 year
Wow.
period of time. And so to answer your question, I'm still going strong, and there's so many people that I want to talk to and that show interest of being on the show that for the foreseeable future, I'm going strong.
Yeah. And I would just, my take would be, I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, because I get when I know you have a nice set of hair and I don't anymore. But what I would say is, here's what I get now that I've been out in kind of this new role of consulting and just being open to new things, is I get a lot of people ask me, just you've been successful. So it's like, tell me how you did this. And I think a lot of the younger generations, the millennials and the Gen Z, I think they get a bad rap because that they say they're not open to input. I actually think they're more open to input than you might believe. And
Yeah.
I would say keep doing what you're doing, because I think whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's others, can just provide some help in a
Yeah.
day and age where it is just pretty challenging to navigate not only the professional issues of this world, but also the personal ones. So I just encourage you to keep
Yeah.
doing what you're doing.
Well, thanks for saying that. And I would agree with you. I mean, it's always true that if you can see someone um, like yourself or came from a similar place or whatever and reached a high level, if you can see somebody like that, it's easier to vision that, maybe I could do that someday, or maybe I could
Right.
do that. And
Right.
so, yeah, I think people that have a lot of experience and have done well in their life are good examples to others. And so to be visible for that, I think is a good thing to do. So,
Good. Well,
yeah.
thank you.
Well, Kennedy, at this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question that you're probably aware of. So, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
Pearl of wisdom that I would leave you today is always continue to work on your character. And at whatever season of life that you are in, I would say that your character is essential. And I would say that keep whatever season you're in, keep working on it. Keep looking for ways to improve your character, because so much of leadership is about character.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Now, are you a snow skier?
I'm not. I've gone to the dark side. So
Oh,
I
you're a
grew up.
boarder.
I'm a boarder. So I grew up in a beach in Laguna in Southern California. So give me a board, I'm awesome. Two planks, not good. Give me a single plank, I'm great. So
Okay.
I'm a snowboarder. My wife grew up as a ski instructor in Scotland. So she got me. I said I couldn't do the two ski thing, but I am a snowboarder, and the family is split between the dark side snowboarders like myself and the skiers like
Yeah.
my wife.
Well, I was going to suggest that maybe we could meet sometime in Utah down with Mark, and
Ah, love
we
it.
could hit the mountains. But we can't go to Alta because they don't let you dark
They
siders
don't.
on that mountain. But we could.
Discrimination.
There's other mountains down there. So
Park City's my favorite resort. So
yeah.
I will, the next time I'm talking with our mutual friend, Mark Anderson, I will let him know that we need a ski weekend up in
Yeah.
Park City. Okay.
Okay, it's a deal. That's great. Well, Kennedy, thanks for your time today. I've really appreciated it. And again, I just kick myself for not getting to know you sooner. But things that we all get busy in life, and we all do our things, and so now's better than not at all. So I
Right. And
appreciate
there's
you.
opportunities for the future.
That's for sure. So take care. Have a great 2025, and I'm sure we'll meet each other down the road somewhere.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, Kennedy, take care. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.